Monday mornings, I should say those Monday mornings when we don't have a Monday holiday, we are joined by Randy Stapilus, the publisher of Idaho Weekly Briefing, and we get a rundown of, it's everything from some environmental issues, that could be forest fires, drought, to politics, and that's politics at all levels, really. It's local, and it's state, and it's national, and in keeping with our Monday mornings with Randy, he is joining us again on air, and first of all, welcome back to the show.
Well, good to be back.
4:30 or 8:34, excuse me. We're not getting up at 4 to do this, not yet anyway. Or 8:43, excuse me. 62 our temperature, and you're listening to Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I was looking through the briefing this morning, and gosh, Idaho seems to mirror some of the national polling numbers right now, with Trump and Carson, or in some places Carson and Trump, when it comes to Republican political choices. Last week I was at the Twin Falls County Fair, and the Republicans had done a straw poll. Carson finished first, Trump second, and then Jeb Bush a distant third. You were going over some of these numbers on the state level as well as in several counties, and you're pretty much finding a pattern, aren't you?
Pretty much, and it's kind of interesting. There was a poll done by a Salt Lake City polling firm of Idaho, about 500 more or less randomly selected Idahoans, the great bulk of them Republicans or Republican leading. And in that case, you had something that reflected a lot of what you see nationally. Trump first, Carson second, and everyone else in a very distant third. Then after that, there's been a few local polls that show Carson a little bit ahead, Trump a little bit further behind to one degree or another, and one or another of the other candidates, Ted Cruz popping up probably the most, uh, showing up in some of the local straw polls and things like that. In addition to Twin Falls, there were we've seen that out of Bannock County, out of Jefferson County, and it's kind of interesting, the distinction there. Nationally, Trump has not been very close to the Republican organization and to what's considered kind of establishment Republicans, but he does have a great deal of grassroots support. So you see a real difference there between things like straw polls that local parties are involved in which Trump doesn't do quite so well, but just regular polling in which he does better.
When you mentioned that, a thought popped into my head. Rand Paul has been to Idaho, and he's got some strong support in the fact that he's got Congressman Labrador really running that campaign for him. His father did very, very well in Idaho, and yet he seems to be really just not getting any traction.
It's interesting. All those things are true, and they should all be leading to a little bit more results for him. But where's what you might say? Where's the ROI? Where's the return on that investment? There doesn't, at this point anyway. There doesn't seem to be much. But one thing that we know from 2012 is that there's always the possibility of some churn, and if people fall to the wayside. If Trump does at some point, if Carson does, then who knows? I think there are candidates who are polling very low right now, who are staying in, figuring that conditions may change. For a whole bunch of them, conditions would have to change a great deal, but you never know. That could happen. What's been interesting so far is that only one candidate from the original group, Rick Perry of Texas, has dropped out. And the others, I think, are kind of hoping that there will be some sort of a change. There were a lot of people, I think, who were thinking that Donald Trump would have one way or another flamed out by this point, but that's obviously not happened. And so the question is now starting to come up. Well, how does it all play out if he in fact does last into the voting season next year?
Does he have any appeal with Idaho Democrats as well?
Not I would say very much. By and large, not with Democrats overall as a general group, but there could very possibly be a small group. There's always the possibility of finding some, though, because he aligned with Democrats, of course, uh, for a good number of years before switching to the Republicans. So he may be able to find something there, but I doubt that the numbers would be very large.
I would still assume that Hillary Clinton carries a lot of weight with Democrats in Idaho.
At this point, yes, and there was some polling out of Salt Lake City that reinforced that gave her a clear first place in some of the first states that are coming up. Bernie Sanders is actually leading Hillary Clinton now in the latest polls out of Iowa and New Hampshire, and that could be true in some other places yet. There isn't any evidence of that in Idaho to this point.
Idaho Democrats have a new state chair, and of course, we're probably seeing that party on a rebuild at the moment. But we don't see any names, at least publicly, coming forward saying that they are going to be challenging next year Mike Crapo or Mr. Labrador or Mr. Simpson. No one yet, at least, has come forward and said, "This is the job. I'm going to do it."
Not yet, not yet. It's still you might reasonably say that it's still a little bit early for that. Although it's getting toward the season for any really serious candidate to do it. And in the last cycle, by around this time, most of those candidates did have most of the offices on a higher level did have Democratic candidates who were running. By this point, you had A.J. Balikoff running for governor. You had a Senate race in place. You had a number of things like that were kind of beginning to lock into place. But that hasn't happened yet, at least. And so far, I haven't even heard any. I've not heard so much as a single name being circulated to this point. I'm not even clear of what sort of candidate recruitment is going on. It's going to be, I think, a real major challenge because all three of those office holders are very well positioned, have a track record of winning very decisively, and or overwhelmingly, and it's going to be very, very tough. And it's any Democratic candidate that gets in has to know that they get in with odds that are pretty remote.
851-62 at our studios. Joining us, Randy Stapilus, the publisher of Idaho Weekly Briefing, and of course, Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com and Top Story. There's really no one on the state level, apparently. When you look back in the era of maybe Cecil Andrus and Frank Church and the like, the Democrats really don't have any what you'd call heavyweights at the moment.
No, it's the phrase that you often hear around the country is what kind of a bench does a party have? And the Democrats' bench, it's been pretty thin for a while, in large part because they haven't been electing people to lower level offices. One of the things that party strategists in both parties, for whichever party is in the minority in a given state, that they suggest is get to electing people to your city councils and county commissions, school boards, because very often it's people like that can work their way up and then become the people who a few years down the line can be running for Congress or running for offices like governor or things like that. And Democrats in Idaho have done that only to a limited degree. It was a few decades ago the case that Democrats had lots of county offices, for example. Many county courthouses in counties that were normally fairly Republican did have a fair number of Democrats in them. But that hasn't been the case in the last couple of decades.
If people would like to read the weekly briefing, where would you send them?
I would send them to www.ridenbaugh.com. That's RIDENBAUGH.
You have a photograph this week, and of course a story accompanying it about a new wheat deal between Idaho and Taiwan. And when I read that, it struck me that there was a lot of what we call opposition to that Pacific trade deal. But is this a result of that?
It's not really a result of that deal because we don't have that deal in place yet. This is really kind of preceding that or separate from that trade deal as such. But it does kind of indicate how important trade with Asia is. Certainly, trade with Asia is very important to Idaho. When governors from current Governor Otter, going back many years, have done trade missions, and they've all gone on trade missions. It's usually been to Asia more often than anywhere else. And there's this wheat deal, which is a pretty large one. It's going to be very important for a lot of Idaho farmers. It certainly indicates why they do that and why they really do kind of need to do that.
We we uh, we look at these deals, and it gives us an impression that economically Idaho may still be doing better than a lot of its neighbors. And you also have a story about August revenues, state revenues, being up, and I guess that's an indication that things may be healthier here than perhaps in many other places.
Well, some of the other states are doing reasonably well as well, but it's certainly the case that Idaho has been bouncing back in terms of its economic picture and the way that state tax revenues are coming in. They're not just coming in at a fairly healthy level; they're also coming in at a higher level than the state's revenue experts had been anticipating would be the case, and that really kind of matters. It among other things, it will give state legislators additional money to figure out what to do with uh, in the next legislative session, which they may just put it into rainy day fund and something like that, but they would have options for doing other sorts of things as well.
I was going to say it's one of those pleasant surprises. It's better to have uh, those numbers than say the opposite direction.
Oh, it certainly is. The irony of that is that it can make for a more contentious legislative session. The old saying of the legislature is that the really rough sessions are when you have more money than you needed rather than less.
Lots of people, when they see you have that extra money, want a piece of it.
Oh yeah, very much so.
Hey, any big news that I didn't ask you about that you see on the horizon that's coming up?
Well, economically, I think that it's worth looking at maybe a little bit over the horizon to see how what else may be coming in. This is a little bit of a growth period at this point. Magic Valley just recently had another manufacturing expansion going on in its area. In the this was the Hylex Poly paper and plastics company at Jerome adding more workers in. I get the sense that there may be a few more additions to that kind of news over the next few weeks before the winter season really starts to kick in.
Randy Stapilus, quickly again, if you could share with us for people who they hear you every week, obviously, but if they'd like to take a look at Idaho Weekly Briefing, where do they go?
I would send them to www.ridenbaugh.com, Ridenbaugh.
Always good talking with you, and we look forward to doing it all over again next Monday.
We'll talk to you then.
Take care, sir. Randy Staples joining us this morning, publisher of Idaho Weekly Briefing, joins us on Monday mornings, as I said earlier. Well, when we have a Monday holiday, I'm usually away. So last Monday, we didn't get a chance to speak with him, but a man that is, I think, pretty well up to speed with what's going on, not only in Idaho, but really throughout the Northwest, especially when it comes to the nitty-gritty of the political news. It's 8:57. We're coming up on a break in just a moment before Fox News at 9 o'clock. We've got more coming up on the show, of course. Want to mention something on my own about this whole Trump phenomena and some comments people are making about that around the country and what direction it might still go before it's all said and done. In the meantime, I need to remind you that we've got a guest coming up Thursday. He'll be joining us, named Kelton Hatch from Idaho Fish and Game, talking about some of the hunting seasons that we're getting involved with. And I wanted to mention as well high desert meat processing, where they process one animal at a time. What you bring in is what you're going to get back. Darren Van Horn, owner of High Desert Meat Processing in Twin Falls, has more than 30 years' experience in the meat business. We recommend you visit High Desert Meat Processing on Facebook, and you can read the reviews of his other customers. Give them a telephone call for all of your wild game and domestic processing needs. High Desert Meat Processing is at 734-9949. High Desert Meat does in-house smoking. Nothing gets shipped out. Specialty meats, jerky, pepperoni, salami, summer sausage, breakfast sausage, brats, Polish dogs, hot dogs, kielbasa, and much more. USDA approved. Darren works closely with local beef growers on their programs to ensure quality meat. Once more, 734-9949.